Dereck Lively is really breaking out and becoming a key part of this Duke team as we roll into March. This is Floor and Ceiling, let's break him down. The very first thing about Lively is his size. 7'1" with a 7'8" wingspan and a 9'4" standing reach. That's why he's actually one of those prospects where we should start with his defense. The Duke freshman is simply a monster on this end of the floor. You can look at defense in many ways, but I think what Lively has shown so far can be broadly divided into 4 areas, starting with his rim protection. For me, the 19-year-old is a contender for best shot blocker in the draft, and yes, that includes Victor Wembanyama. Lively measures similarly to Hassan Whiteside or even Rudy Gobert. He's a massive human being who really makes himself a presence at the basket. In 20 minutes per game, Lively blocks about 2.5 shots. I wish he would play more minutes, more on that later, but that's a really impressive 7+ blocks per 100 possessions. Generally speaking, Duke has actually been fairly conservative with Lively on defense. A lot of the time, he's quote-unquote just hanging back at the basket and swatting shots away. But there's a clear art to this. Lively reminds me of Walker Kessler and one of the best rookies in the NBA just because of his defensive impact, and I think Lively can emulate that. His timing can be excellent. His footwork on point, understanding when to use short jabs, but also when to expand his strides. And if his teammates get beat and he gets challenged at the basket, he can 100% hold the fort down. One of my favorite parts about the first year Duke big is that Lively can block shots with either hand. For instance, watch here. He gets the rejection with his offhand, and notice how well he times himself. Another example, this time versus Purdue, their guard gets into the paint with a really nice split, but Lively's 9'4" standing reach comes into play with his left hand. The second area I want to dive into, and it relates pretty directly to his overall rim protection, it's just that the process is a little different, is Lively's pick and roll defense. As a disclaimer, he's going to get a higher volume of reps guarding ball screens in the NBA than he has in college. Also, there's almost always a steep adjustment period for bigs in the NBA. However, I do think he's shown great instincts and some versatility so far this season. Let's look at some of that then, starting in drop coverage, where it's real easy to imagine how Lively can be a factor. With his length and size, the freshman is great at playing the two-man game that the pick and roll requires. Watch here how Lively positions himself, backpedals with choppy steps, and then at the right perfect time, slightly opens his hips with this step here and hops right into the block with the right hand. Again, I love Lively's positioning here. He's tracking the play, cutting off the lob pass, and he actually gets the block. It's just a bit of bad luck. It pays off here versus Kansas though. Again, Lively is tracking, and he swats the rock out of play. In the same game, this one's not going to show up on the stat sheet, but it's great discipline. The Duke center slides, mirrors the attacker when he stops, and then you tell me where the angle for this pass is given Lively's size. Crucially though, the Duke freshman is used in drop a lot of the time because he's super effective here, not because of any lingering concerns about him on the perimeter. Like I said, he will get tested more in the NBA than at Duke though. Most definitely, Lively can come up high and switch, or at the very least, contain. He moves real well and fluidly for a legit 7-footer, and well, he's probably going to move even better in say a year from now. After all, he came into this season with a calf injury that early on actually had me a tiny bit concerned. I thought Lively was just a step slow or lagging behind during his first few weeks of action. His second jump maybe wasn't there entirely, which is only natural. But I think it's worth keeping in mind when we evaluate Lively's tape and the progress he's made this season. For instance, I think this floater from November probably is not a make now in March. Lively has a lean frame, but he's not narrow. I think he's going to fill out nicely while keeping this agility that allows him to slide on the perimeter and then into the paint. This versus Caleb Love is a textbook example. Watch how easily the Duke center flips his hips, and then Love can only pass off because it's not like he's gonna dare shoot over. Very few attackers can actually make their shots over Lively. Time and time again, he's altered shots at the rim without even necessarily needing to get the block. On top of that, I do want to see more, but I think he's going to be able to full-on switch at times and defend on an island. Lively can get low and he gives himself enough room to contest or backpedal. In this clip here, I'm blown away by how fluid he is with the entire court ahead of him. The third area I want to look at is Lively's versatility. This applies in a few ways, but the biggest one pertains to his usage alongside other bigs. At Duke, that was Kyle Filipowski. Like I said in my video about him, I actually think Flip is a competent defender. His fit is just kind of funky because he's more coordinated than quick, strong, or explosive for a 7-footer. That is where Lively comes in and where it really helps Flip to have him sharing the backcourt with him. Whenever he gets beat off the bounce, Lively is there to erase absolutely everything in the paint. It's going to be interesting to see what type of system Lively plays in once he's in the NBA. Basically, whether or not he'll be the only 5 on the floor. Before Duke in EYBL action, Lively played next to Jalen Duren. They're both NBA players, so they're going to dominate, but I'm more focused on the usage. Duren is a better athlete than Flip, but the perimeter isn't his natural stomping grounds, so similarly, it was very helpful to have Lively stationed at the rim. Even when it seems like he's away from the play or opponents may have dragged him out of position, Lively is great at covering space and then getting back into the action. His agility allows Duke to be more aggressive in multiple ways, and the same is going to be said for his future NBA team. For instance, Lively comes up high here and hedges. Maybe he's not going to do this as much in the NBA, but the offense is now out of sorts and Duke's Mark Mitchell can get the steal as the low man. One of the biggest questions often asked about Dereck Lively II is probably about his strength, but honestly, I'm not too concerned. It's true, he's gotten moved around a few times this season, but that's mostly come against bigs who, without being disrespectful, are just not really going to be found in the NBA. Whenever Lively has had to do that against a heavier or stronger center, he's largely lived up to the challenge. Lively plays the pick and roll perfectly, takes the bump, and racks up the block. Or when Duke faced Purdue, Lively played Zach Edey, the most dominant big in college hoops, pretty tough. He did his best to make Edey uncomfortable, and in the process got a few stops. So really, my actual biggest question about Lively is if he can stay out of foul trouble. Dereck Lively is absolutely going to try to block every shot. Don't get me wrong, he's not shameless, he's not hunting for blocks, but he's relentless. When that's the case, you're bound to pick up fouls. The second thing here is that sometimes these fouls aren't really Lively's fault per se. Part of playing how he does is making up for his teammates, that recovery that we touched on earlier. So again, when that's your role, you're gonna pick up fouls. He has 86 fouls to 74 blocks, which clearly is not ideal. Lively's not gonna stop trying to block shots when he gets into foul trouble, or if he gets put on a poster. But he's also got to better understand when to balance that rim protection with making himself available on the floor. Lively fouls 8 times per 100 possessions. Going forward, I want to see him cut down on those fouls, stay more disciplined with his verticality, and be more aware of what the moment calls for. Dereck Lively plays a very limited role on offense at Duke, but even outside of that, he's a fairly simple offensive player. That doesn't mean I don't like him on this end though, because I do, and that's because Lively is so effective. He's great at what he does, and most of the time, that means dunking the ball. About 71% of Lively's buckets this year are dunks. He's played 635 minutes this season and has 52 dunks, so that means about once every 12 minutes, you're gonna get a big jam from Lively. Again, him being 7'1" with enormous arms comes into play in a way that's easy to see here. It's just that he does it with so much assertiveness and, most of all, consistency. One clear way to get the most out of this is pick and rolls. Like on defense, I expect that the Duke big will get more of these in the NBA because it's such a ball screen heavy league right now. Also returning to what I mentioned about him and Kyle Filipowski sharing the floor, it's crucial to note that Duke gets really good results with Flip acting as the screener. At Duke, whenever he has been the one screening, I think it's really helped that Tyrese Proctor has been creating for Lively. That's how as a freshman, Lively is making about 66% of his field goals. Tapping into this ability to play above the rim then, it should be no surprise that Lively can also punish defenses on the glass. About 1/4 of those makes at the basket that we just saw come exclusively out of tip dunks, which is pretty ridiculous to think about. So many of the things we've discussed here, the size, the length, the agility, etc., come into play. We've talked about them enough though, and the clips are going to tell the story, so instead I want to talk about where Lively might fit in today's NBA. My first takeaway is that he can be awesome in a low volume role. That's already the case at Duke. His usage rating is a tiny 13-ish%, and Lively is not even taking 4 shots a night. There's no doubt that he does make Duke better on offense despite that. Advanced stats will back this up, and it's not like Lively is feasting against weaker opponents either. However, the NBA is built around scoring right now, and Lively, in all sincerity, doesn't do that enough. He's averaging 5 points, 5 rebounds, and 1 assist. Yes, that's totally misleading in a vacuum because the actual impact on the floor is a lot greater. But my point here is that Lively is very much a defensive-minded prospect in an offensive-minded league. This season, he has no double-doubles and he's scored in the double digits just 5 times. Even beyond that, Lively is really efficient, but he's shown virtually no range. But I am holding out some hope for his three-pointer. Going back to those EYBL days, Lively's shown that he can stretch the floor at least to some extent, and the 2 threes he's made this season haven't looked too bad either.
I see Lively as a rare breed, a really fundamentally sound rim protector, but also skilled enough to, in my opinion, fit the modern game. Even if he never scores or shoots at a high level, he brings enough to the table with his finishing, rebounding, and I also think with his passing down the line. Lively has 35 assists, 21 turnovers this season. These clips on the short roll are what NBA teams will love to see from the 5-star big. Lively plays with his head up, and he's shown that he can pass while on the move to different angles. He has so much gravity when he dives to the rim, either it's going to be a dunk or a lob, so defenders have to wall him off. When this happens, when they rotate, Lively is going to need to know when and how to release the ball to others. In this clip, the Duke big gets the ball with his back to the basket, he sees the double coming and whips the pass across with one hand for the 3. Syracuse puts less pressure on him here, but I'm encouraged by this read again to generate and assist the corner 3. Still, I also like that Lively can be used in a more simple role. Duke has had him executing handoffs and dribble handoffs. Lively has to time it well, be secure with the ball, and also create enough space for the receiving ball handler. So even though Lively's main role in the NBA will be reliant on his play finishing, I'm encouraged by the plenty of things he's done well.
So with Dereck Lively, I think it comes down to a little bit of a battle, if you will, between defense and offense and between what's valued more in today's NBA, right? I have him right now as a top 20 pick. I think what he brings to the table defensively in terms of his versatility, in terms of how quickly he recovers, his length, his pop off the floor, which has gotten better throughout the season, and just generally I think that he can be a monster rim protector. So I really value that. But on offense, there's no doubt his role, at least early on, is going to be very simple. We've seen guys like Mitchell Robinson who don't really need to do a whole lot more than just dunk and then protect the rim on defense. You know, of course they do other things, but that's more or less what it boils down to. I think Lively can definitely be very effective and very, instinctual in that role. It comes to him naturally, and not only that, I do think he has the ball skills to flash out a little bit, dribble handoffs, some passes from the elbows back to the basket. As always, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like, make sure to leave a comment telling me what you think of Dereck Lively, and if you enjoy the channel, make sure to subscribe. Take care, and I'll catch you guys next time.